your first weekend without sports. I mean, it was supposed to be one of the biggest weekends of the spring with the Players' Championship, SEC basketball tournament finals yesterday, NASCAR race, NBA basketball, the NCAA selection show, coming off Alabama's first spring practice of the season on Friday, and instead we had nothing. What did you do to occupy your time?
Well, I mean, I've got plenty to occupy my time, obviously, with having, kids, grandkids, and all that.
Yeah.
So I had plenty to do, Gary. But, as far as the spring practice goes, that is something that I was certainly prepared and looking forward to, disappointed that you didn't get to get out there and take a quick look at the team and, hear from Coach Saban, all of those things that we like to do in the spring. So it was kind of like everything just shut down, and that was kind of a very, very odd feeling.
Yeah, it did. I mean, we had a Alabama baseball series after getting off to that incredible start, ready to welcome in Missouri for the first SEC series of the season, Alabama softball tournament, and like that, it was snatched from us. Football-wise, I mentioned this earlier. The SEC stepped in and just said, we're halting all sporting events, including spring football. Some schools, 5 of them, I think, had already started spring practice. But my feeling is, and I want to see if you agree, that once this is over and hopefully we get this under control and this, campuses are back open and athletic facilities, that we will have all of these schools will get their 15 practices in. Now, it may be late April and into May, and who knows when it will be. But my feeling is that Alabama and the other SEC schools will hold spring ball and have these 15 practices. Is that your understanding?
Well, I hope so. I mean, I just think right now it just seems to me everything's unpredictable. I would have never expected it to get to this point where all the spring sports would be canceled, where spring practice right now is postponed. So to me, it's just I'm hoping, I'm leaning towards what you're saying there, that I would expect that eventually spring practice will get underway. They'll get their practices in, and like you said, it'll be obviously later. The question is, Gary, what about like spring games? What will happen with something like A-Day? Will it just become another scrimmage that is closed, which is probably what I would expect at this point if it gets to that? So just a lot of unanswered questions right now. We simply just don't know, but maybe hopefully over the next week or two we'll start getting all that figured out. But I sure hope so. I sure hope they get spring practice in, not just Alabama, obviously, but all the schools, because I think it's very important.
Yeah, clearly the president and other leaders in our country are doing what they feel has to be done, and I think now we're all at the point where we respect that and we understand it. It's not what we would like to have seen happen, but we have to do what's best for humanity as a whole, and sports is being impacted. Football-wise, Rod, I guess all you can do, because the football facility is closed, and clearly is as a coaching staff, give those players their workouts and trust them that they'll do the best that they can to stay in shape and study their playbook and do the things that they can do on their own, because as we've talked about, spring football really is where you build your team. The off-season program, Nick Saban said it many times. If you go 12-0, that's not a product of what you did in fall camp. That's really a product of what you did building up to fall camp. So I guess all you can do as a coaching staff for all these schools is give the players the information and hope that they will, as individuals, do the best that they can to keep themselves ready and prepared for when they do get to start back with football-related activities, right?
Yeah, what else can you do? I mean, one thing about it is, that Nick Saban's got a plan. He's figured it out. Personalized plan for each player. I'm sure there'll be daily contact with many of the players, or certainly regular contact with all the players over this period, to make sure or to encourage, to reemphasize the importance of doing what they need to do to stay in the best shape they possibly can, because they've just come off this fourth quarter program. So it's really important to maintain where you are and hopefully come in and when they do resume and start practice, you're still in really good shape. You're ready to go. And they can do these things, Gary. It's not that difficult. It's just a matter of some guys are more disciplined than others when they're on their own. So I'm sure that they have a pretty good idea of which guys are the more disciplined, and the other guys they're going to have to stay on more. So it's like I said, it's going to be a difficult thing, obviously, because this is something that's never been experienced before. But again, Nick Saban generally comes up with something that's a good plan.
Yeah, he does. He really, really does. As you said, Rodney, we don't know for sure what's going to happen, and so it's really hard for me to ask you any kind of evaluation question in regards to Alabama football because we don't know how this is all going to play out. So normally this segment today would have been, what did you see Friday? What did you think? How did they look on the hook, as you like to say? We'd have Saban comments. We would have something to go off of, and really now this morning we don't have anything. Now you and I have to do Tighter Insider TV tomorrow night, and we're going to focus some on some new enrollees, some of the freshmen that came in early. So I'll ask you about some of those guys. And again, the way the game has changed in the last 10 or 15 years or 20 years, there was a time when if you played as a true freshman, you were really special. But now we expect freshmen to come into play, and just another great recruiting class coming on board, some guys that were here, even though you didn't get to see them on Friday the way you would have liked to. Who are some guys that you think that are newcomers that could impact this football team right off the bat in 2020?
Yeah, well, the first thing you said that kind of caught my attention was, with everything being as slow as it is, I kind of was thinking back yesterday, kind of going back to some of the most impressive true freshmen I've ever seen, the best true freshmen I've ever seen at Alabama. Trying to come up with just a few, and I limited it to 7 true freshmen over the years. But what you were talking about in the 70s, Gary, there were a lot of great players. There were a lot of players that probably as true freshmen today would have been major contributors. But back then, you rarely saw a true freshman make a real significant contribution. Of course, there were probably a few exceptions to the rule. I mean, if you looked around the country, you remember Tony Dorsett when he was a freshman. He had one of the great seasons. And then later in the 80s, obviously, at 1980, Herschel Walker. But I'm just talking about for Alabama. So it was most of mine came from, the 90s on, except for Cornelius Bennett. He was a guy that I think was one of the most ready true freshmen I think I've ever seen at Alabama. From the very first time he stepped on the field against Georgia Tech, he was just a guy that his presence was felt. But, as you start looking forward to the group this year, like you said, it's changed. So many guys will have opportunities to create a role for themselves. I look on the defensive side. You look at the outside. You look at pass rushers at outside linebacker. You're kind of inexperienced there. You've got Chris Allen coming back. He's the most experienced guy right now out there on the outside. So a guy like Drew Sanders out of Denton, Texas, guy's a fantastic talent. Could be a 5-star tight end, 5-star outside linebacker. Gary, he's 6'4", 6'5", 235 pounds, and he's got the mentality. He's got the mean streak. He's got the physical tools. He's, got everything you look for, obviously except experience. Will Anderson, incredible burst off the edge. I mean, he's got a first step. Kind of when you look at him, if you remember watching Rashawn Evans' high school tape, just that incredible first step. I think Will Anderson has an opportunity to make a strong contribution. Maybe a DeMoy Kennedy at inside linebacker could be another guy that could eventually emerge. Just a fabulous athlete. Played the same high school, Theodore, that C.J. Mosley came out of. And, talking to Coach P. Ryan down there, he's told me that Coach Collier has told me down there that he thinks DeMoy Kennedy is more athletic, not a better football player, but more athletic than C.J. Mosley. Think about that. So that's pretty incredible. On the offensive side, of course, everyone wants to talk about Bryce Young. And again, I understand quarterback's a touchy subject. That's nothing, directed at Mac Jones or Talia or Paul Tyson in any way. It's just this guy's the new guy in the room. He's a five-star talent, five-star player, National Player of the Year according to most everyone, and brings in those great numbers that he does. You watch his tape, Gary, and I know that we'll probably highlight him tomorrow night on Tiger Insider TV. Wow. I mean, he can do it all. He's a guy that he stands in there, he delivers the ball, a lot like Tua. Better athlete, than Tua. He moves around better. He's faster. He's quicker. He's just a different style. Got a little Kyler Murray in him, a little Russell Wilson. But I think he's got a chance to be a really exciting player. Depends on how quickly he can make the adjustments that he needs to make and learn and kind of develop. So it'll all be interesting to see, and that's why I think we were looking forward to it. You and I, we talked about it, just looking forward to the opportunity of seeing a lot of these freshmen that were already enrolled.
This coronavirus, and I've said it several times going back to last week, this is all unprecedented what we're dealing with in terms of sports in this country. And I remember last Monday and Tuesday not even really mentioning it, just talking about things as normal. Then Wednesday, starting to talk about it. And then by Thursday, it was getting real. And then obviously on Friday, you knew all this was coming. And today, as we talk, it is a reality that basically sports for now has been postponed or canceled in this country. I think, Rod, that we're getting it. It's something that needed to be done. At the same time, you feel for these athletes. I mean, I look at Alabama baseball, Rodney, and they were off to their best start since 1997, and the fans were excited and fired up, and you're getting ready for your first SEC series of the season, and you've only lost one game, and then all of a sudden, the snap of a fingers, it's gone. So you can, I think, and we as sportscasters and sports analysts, you can certainly understand the big picture and that we're doing what we have to do, but still have empathy for these athletes that have just had their season snatched right away from them, whether it be basketball right before the postseasons or the softball teams and the baseball teams and the gymnastics teams. You hurt for them at the same time, don't you?
Yeah, you really do. I mean, man. That's what they prepare for all year. Think about it. I mean, this is the excitement's there. These guys are competitors. They're looking forward to it. It's what they're here for. So I think that and the girls softball as well. I know that there were a lot of high expectations for that this year, and not just that, but also I think I look at it as on a bigger scale nationally. I see some of these teams like Dayton, for example. All of these teams that had great years and were looking forward to the NCAA tournament. You think about those athletes, how they must feel. Some of those guys will never get a chance to experience what they had in front of them. This experience of the NCAA tournament. Many of them may not get to ever experience that, and they'll always wonder, I guess, what if? What if we'd have had that opportunity? So it's very disappointing for them. Again, I don't know enough about it. I'm not an expert. I just think some of this, to me, why don't you just postpone it, delay it, or just say we're going to continue to evaluate it and see how it plays out a little bit before we make a final decision. But it is what it is. They've canceled all these events, and so that's where we are.
Yeah, it is. It is where we're at, and we all just have to make the best of it. And that's all you can do. As I said, folks, we will have Tiger Insider TV tomorrow night, scheduled at 6:30, and Rodney will be with me on WVOA 23, and we're going to obviously talk some more about the coronavirus. We have to, because it's altered the sports calendar at the University of Alabama and all over the country. But we will spotlight some of these guys that are on campus now, that are true freshmen, and we will try to, look ahead and project a little bit, as Rodney just did, but in more detail with, guys that we think can impact this football team. So make sure and join us for that. We will have it tomorrow night. And Rodney, I don't want to say business as usual at TigerInsider.com, but TigerInsider.com is there, and the forums, I'm sure, are full of information, not just on sports, but on the latest coronavirus updates. I know people will be putting those out there, so I'm sure it's pretty busy nonetheless.
Well, the quad, where we allow people to, discuss things around the world, whatever it is, it's been a ton of information on the virus and so forth. And it's the quad. If you haven't familiarized yourself with it, if you're not a Tighter Insider member, it's quite an interesting place. I mean, it's very informative. And then on the All Sports Forum, Gary, there's not as much talk. Obviously, it's been really quiet, a little slow for obvious reasons. But hopefully soon everything picks up. And TighterInsider.com. It's only $48 a year. You can get instant access with your credit card if you prefer. There's an address there to send a check.
Okay, sounds good. And follow Rodney on Twitter as well, @TighterInsider. Thanks, buddy.
Okay, man. Take care.